Hello, welcome back to Dougy's Dungeon. Today we have Stealthy Stormy here from TikTok. You want to go ahead and shout yourself out and shout out all your social medias?
Yeah. So, hi everybody. I'm Stealthy Stormy, also known as my name's Taylor Rowland, but everybody calls me Stealthy. Nobody ever calls me Taylor. You guys can find me primarily on TikTok as Stealthy Stormy and on Instagram as Stormy's Rogue Miniatures. And I'm kind of everywhere when it comes to playing D&D on Twitch. Primarily, you can my home is on Department of Adventures. So,
Nice, nice. So today I guess we're gonna be talking about like miniature painting because that's mainly what you're into. And
mhm.
then we can kind of get into your D&D experience and your like DM experience specifically. So why don't you go ahead and talk about what got you into painting miniatures in the first place?
So, really what got me into painting miniatures in the first place is kind of what got me into D&D. I've only been playing D&D, I think 4 years now. Well, 4 years. Um, but I started playing D&D and we were all playing at the table, with just most miniatures nowadays come are just, plain white plastic, nothing really to look at all. And I got really tired of sitting there watching me and my friends play with just these plain plastic miniatures, and we'd pick one up and go, "Oh wait, that one's not mine." Set it back down and grab actually ours. And then one day my DM said, "I'm just gonna end up painting all the bases of these miniatures." And at that point, I hadn't picked up a paintbrush in probably about 5 years. And I went, "Well, if you want, I could try painting them, and we'll see how it goes." And I come back and bring them to the table, the next week, and everyone's freaking out about, "Oh, these are really good, blah blah blah." And I'm like every artist on the face of the planet. I'm like, "No, no, they're not that good." And they're convinced me otherwise, and here I am now painting miniatures on commission
I mean,
4 years
everyone
later.
everyone has to start somewhere.
Yeah.
I mean, so like what specific like it was just kind of you wanting to not look at blank minis anymore that got you into painting or just into D&D in general?
Just kind of into D&D. Like I was an art major throughout school, but thanks to life events, I stopped painting and drawing at that point. And you know, it was just kind of I got tired of looking at the blank miniatures, and whenever my DM said, "I'm just gonna at least paint the bases," and I went, "Well, I haven't used this skill set, but I have it. I can give it a shot trying to paint these things." And everyone was like, "Whoa, that's really great!" So,
Yeah, how I got into painting minis is I because I used to buy the like the pre-painted ones, but those are really expensive. So I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna buy the blank bones miniatures and the blank bones miniatures and paint that myself instead. And I was not very good at it to start
mhm,
at all. And then I finally like worked myself up to buy my very first pewter miniature because those were even more expensive at the time. Now they're you can hardly even find the pewter miniatures anymore. Um, and yeah, so I started painting those, and I actually painted my first pewter one, which is oddly enough right here for those who are watching YouTube. Painted it with watercolors, like white base and then watercolors because that's all I had at the time. So yeah, but and then I got better and started painting different things, and I don't do anything noteworthy, but uh,
mhm.
yeah, chat saying I always hated painting pewter. I did as well because like you drop it once and it would chip because
Chip.
pewter's kind of soft, so it would deform. And the paint wouldn't. Yeah, awful.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I have a couple pewter miniatures. Ironically enough, my grandma is the one who found them. She found them at a thrift store out forever ago, and went, "Oh, my granddaughter loves these. Let me mail those to her." And next thing I know, I get this random box of stuff, of things that she just thinks that I like. And inside of those is a box of little pewter war miniatures. So I went,
Like
"Okay, cool."
I guess she was right. She
Yeah.
found something that you liked. Man,
So,
like what's your fondest memory? about painting miniatures? Like when you think back at like when you first started, what is your fondest memory about getting into painting miniatures?
Um, I think, like, of course, it was cool to paint miniatures for all my friends. But I think the favorite thing that I've ever done is my friend had this owl familiar for his blade singing rogue, and he is actually the one who like sat down with me at the table and taught me how to play D&D and everything. So, as a gift, I found the world's smallest little tiny owl miniature um, to paint for him. And I remember sitting there agonizing over, painting in this very intricately detailed owl just so I could give it to him at the beginning of the next session. And he just like completely flipped out that that he had this little tiny owl miniature that's in scale that goes with everything else on the table, and that just made him so happy to have that, and it was great.
Awesome. I actually recently got one of those they're with kids like 5 pack things that came with a whole bunch. It
Mhm,
was like a familiar pack. Came with a cat, came with a toad, and came with a I think a owl or a hawk or something.
mhm.
Those things are so like I got shaky hands. I can't even.
Yeah. And they're so tiny and everything. It's ironic to me, but like my favorite memory is involving the tiniest miniature on the face of the planet that I can think of.
That's awesome.
So,
Yeah. I I don't know. I guess my fondest memory was sorry, I've like one of my fondest memories about like getting into painting miniatures and everything was when like we had a whole bunch of miniatures at my table or whatever, and I had
mhm,
like bought like a whole box of bones, like those cheap plastic ones when they first came out. And I remember just it was like a whole bunch of orcs and goblins and stuff like that, and none of them were painted. And a couple of bugbears in there as well. And for the longest time, I had been using like just the plain white because I didn't have the confidence to actually uh, paint them. But I remember like I just painted them green, like the whole thing green. Like they look like little army men. And just that alone, just kind of like everyone's like, oh, that's so cool. It was like, and I was like, well, I could do better than that. And that's what got me into painting minis
mhm.
was just, you know, friends being like, that's really cool. Like even though I know it sucked, like it looked, just a little green orc army man looking thing.
Yeah.
But
I before this, I think about going back to one of the first miniatures that I painted. I went and dug one out for you. um, so I don't know if I can.
let's
Oh,
get
you
this for
guys
the
can kind of see
camera
it.
for the viewers.
Yeah, for everybody. So the YouTube videos will be able to see this. So I, this is a spider mount that a friend of mine ended up having because he's a drow paladin.
That's so
So
cool.
I hate spiders. But I ended up actually looking up details of spiders that I could actually paint on this large spider mount for my friend. Um,
The things we do for our friends.
yes, yes, like nightmares of spiders for the next week and a half. Sure, but uh, and now I've kind of progressed on. This one I did actually was a competition um,
Wow.
for. So this one has an interesting story behind it because I know, especially talking about Warhammer miniatures and everything. I do a lot on TikTok. That's kind of how I got started, and I guess the online D&D community, as it were. Um, and a friend of mine, I Snap Plastic. If you watch him on, primarily most of his content is Gundams, but however, recently he's gotten into Warhammer miniatures, so he will build Gundams and Warhammer miniatures, and then he normally airbrushes them as a
Wow. That's
to paint them and redo custom designs on them and everything. And of course, airbrushing, especially metallic type figures, is always super cool. It always has a great finish. It looks wonderful. You can do a lot of stuff with airbrush. However, I was in his TikTok live one day. This is right about the time that we both started on TikTok, and he throws down the gauntlet, saying that he can airbrush a dragon better than I can use traditional brush painting techniques on that. So he decides to throw that gauntlet down, and I went, okay, bet. So we used it. We both got the same miniature. We both had all of our paint colors kind of pre-mixed that we needed, and both dragons were primed before start. And then we had 2 hours, 2 hours to paint this live on stream.
The whole
So I
thing.
ended up using every minute of the 2 hours. And I don't know if my camera will pick this up, but you can see his teeth
It's,
are actually painted as well.
let me look at the other camera. Or sorry, the other screen. That is gorgeous. All right, so those of you who are listening on, podcast format, just got this like it's about an adult dragon size, right?
Mhm.
How much did that cost? The base, the
This
model. I
one,
mean, yeah, $50
um,
got to be at least.
actually no. This one is a I think it's Reaper. Hang on. Yeah, I think it's a Reaper miniature.
Chad is asking if you have pictures of these models on your Instagram.
I do have shots of these models on my Instagram.
So if you're listening to this, definitely go check out Stealthy Out on Instagram. Gorgeous minis. And to do all of that work in 2 hours, that take me a week at least.
yeah, so
Jesus.
the gauntlet was thrown down, and we had some
Who?
of our
Yeah, who
friends
won?
who do miniatures. I mean, who do miniatures or just do D&D in general judge, and I won, single
Nice.
hands down. Because while he did do a very nice job of brush painting this metallic dragon, because it's actually a copper dragon, but I wanted to make it look like this one, was patinaed. Didn't really care what his scales look like at that point. So he's very patinaed, with just hints of the copper coming through. um, I single handedly won. So he's thrown down the gauntlet. We have to have a rematch, except this time we're going to be doing a Gundam. Uh, since he fought me on my turf, I have to fight him on his turf. So,
Are you gonna airbrush or
oh no, brush paint still. I'm probably going to end up doing a graffiti paint job on the Gundam rather than
that'd be interesting too.
yeah.
I feel like that'd be kind of hard to get the like like spray paint graffiti. Like how do you? You're probably way better at painting miniatures than I am. I am mediocre. I get by, you
So
know.
to do it brush painting style, I'm gonna have to. There's gonna be a lot of dry brushing involved. Um, I know what scares a lot of people about miniature painting is because those people are like, well, I don't know what this thing is or how to, I don't know how to do these different techniques. Honestly, it's a lot of trial and error. Now, I had the luxury of going through art school, um, which kind of gives me, I kind of had a jump start on everything. But,
Yeah.
a lot of it's just trial and error, and to kind of get the airbrushed look of the graffiti, I'm going to end up doing a technique called dry brushing, where instead of like getting the bristles wet, or have very little, hardly any paint at all on my paintbrush. So that way, whenever I do it, I'm just applying very thin, tiny, wispy layers of paint to get that kind of brushed, airbrushed effect without actually using an airbrush.
Yeah, I that's actually a technique that I only recently learned how to do. And then because I had known how to do washing before, that's where you kind of like have like a dyed for the listeners, that's where you have like kind of like a diluted watery dye, and then you like brush it over your miniature, and it kind of seeps into the crevices and the lines and really makes them more pronounced. Like I'd been doing that before, but I had like just recently learned how to start dry brushing. That was just
Hmm.
something I just picked up, and like I started using it. We're gonna get into it a little bit later, but I, experimenting with foam core. I made this. Doesn't look very good. It's just to get the job done. I'm fine being mediocre, but to those of you listening, I like started making my own like foam like set pieces for Dungeons and Dragons, and that's what I've used it on. But we'll get into foam core a little bit later.
Yeah. So, but I know that, yeah, trying to learn those techniques and things, I don't know, scares a lot of people. So, I haven't made one in a hot minute, a very, very hot minute, but, I had like quick little like 1 minute, um, kind of tutorial videos on TikTok. If you scroll far enough back in my TikTok, I haven't made them in a while. Just hadn't had the drive, but here is like I'm like, no, I can do this again. I can do this. I'm gonna so I'll probably just start the whole series over again. Just kind of explaining how quickly, yeah, how different techniques kind of work in miniature painting because it's not that hard. Anybody can pick up a paintbrush and start painting a miniature. So
Yeah,
it's just a matter of you just kind of sometimes you just need someone to explain it real quick on how exactly those things work. So
yeah. I was like genuinely surprised at like how easy, like when I first started getting into it, like because I was like really focused in on, at least me personally, I am okay with my things not looking photorealistic at on the table. I personally am just a means to an end kind of person, so I am okay with it if it doesn't look like terribly detailed or anything. I used to be hyper focused on that with my miniatures, and then I became like a consistent forever DM with minis, and I had to stop caring because I had to paint so many so often.
oh yeah,
Um, so like just doing general like broad strokes, kind of, putting paint in the areas just to make it look recognizable is what I kind of do. And then you just hide a lot of the details with your wash, and then you do the dry brush to bring out the highlights, and then you're good. That's, you got that
exactly.
one done in 5 minutes. You don't got to touch it again.
Yeah, I
And
had actually had someone ask me for something like that, and I think I sent you pictures of this one when we first talked.
yeah,
But I did a lava dragon. So there's actually not quite as much detail in this one as there is in the other one, but that's kind of the point because he's a lava dragon.
yeah.
Uh,
Oh, that is so gorgeous.
so the only thing that I really did on him is I did based him out completely in the colors of fire. So oranges, reds, kind of all blended together. And then I just covered the entire thing in dry brushed black 3.0, which is the blackest black that I could get my hands on.
For
Um,
like a charcoal kind of surface singeing. Yeah.
yeah, effect. So you can actually kind of see it better on his wings there.
Yeah. It's so
Yeah.
cool.
It's really
So
cool. So it's like in that one, it's like I was just he didn't want anything fancy other than that. He's like, I want a lava dragon. And I went, okay, anything else? He's like, I don't make me lava dragon. I don't care how you do it. And I was like, okay, so let me figure this out. And then it took me a little while to play with it, but it just ended up, I figured instead of trying to do this highly intricate thing, it just looked way better just doing big, broad strokes across the whole thing with the black and just letting the paint catch where it catches. So,
So this kind of goes back into what the chat was asking earlier. How well do these models repaint? Because you said you experiment and stuff like that. Me personally, I do it all in one go. I don't repaint it at all. I'm just like close enough.
yeah, so the nice thing about these models is they can take a lot of paint before you start to lose any kind of detailing on them. Especially like WizKids is like a really good WizKids and Reaper do some really great models with some nice deep detailing. Even like the little details of like fur and stuff is like uh really has some depth to kind of that texture into it. So it takes a lot of paint before you really start to lose those kind of built-in textured pieces to it. So you can repaint the miniatures, I would say, solidly before you'd have to really worry too much and have to pull out some like high level artistic tricks to I would say maybe like 5 layer, 5 full repaints I think would be fine. Of course, you're talking in a paint, like a whole paint. Like if I wanted to repaint either one of these dragons, I could probably do it about 5 more times before I'd worry about doing a full repaint. Before I'd have to worry about losing some of the smaller details.
That's interesting. Like I said, I've never done that before. Like, is there no way to like strip the paint off?
You can, and the nice thing about you just have to be careful on what kind of
Plastics, it is usually.
plastics it is usually. Like a pewter miniature, you can strip the paint
Oh yeah, you
off
could
that
throw that in
all day
mineral
long.
spirits. Yeah.
um, on some things that strip paint do eat through the plastic,
Yeah, I know
if you are not
PLA,
careful.
the PLA plastic for like 3D
Mhm.
model printed instead of like plastic cast filling.
Yeah,
PLA is like really sensitive to solvents.
yeah.
Um,
So that's that. Yeah, printing out like yeah the PLA miniatures. Those I've just repaint them. Don't strip the paint. You're better off just repainting them. And taking the risk of losing some of the details on them rather than trying to strip the paint off of it because then you'll just have a melted piece of plastic.
yeah, they get gummy and sticky. I've made that
Yeah,
mistake once or twice.
yeah.
Um, have you ever tried painting like resin miniatures? Because I have no experience whatsoever painting resin.
Yeah, so I've done that a couple times here, and I actually have got my resin printer set up. I'm going to attempt a print this weekend and see how it goes. um, but I've ordered them from other people, are already pre-printed for me. Those, I mean, they're great. You can, especially resin printing over PLA printing, you can get a really high level of detail on those,
Yeah.
just because the nature of how the miniatures are made.
So,
But
oh, go ahead.
they're, I was like, they're kind of delicate.
Are they
um,
resin over PLA?
um, it just because the resin's more brittle than the
Oh, I didn't
PLA.
know.
Yeah, it depend. I mean, it depends on the company that you get your resin from and everything. But I always treat those; they're a little bit more brittle than I can take this Reaper miniature and kind of chuck it.
Yeah, I mean
It
that's
can get knocked over
cast.
by the cat, and I don't have to worry about it. I do worry a little bit on resin, so the cat is banned from my room whenever I'm painting resin. Um, so
That's
yeah, so
interesting.
that's kind of the trade off on resin printing is over PLA is they're not quite as durable. But the good thing is like they do like they take adhesives really well and they take paints like really well as
Is
long as you prime it correctly. So
is there no way? So I don't know if this would work. So what I do for like foam and stuff, um, is I have this base uh paint like style. I basically use like was it Elmer's glue, the white
mhm,
Elmer's glue, and then I mix it with like a white or a black paint depending on what color uh base coat I want to do. And then that like really helps and then chalk as well. And that
mhm.
really helps make a really rigid kind of outer layer for the foam. Would that work with I don't know if you know, but with that do you think that something like that would work with the resin? I feel like there's got to be some way to make them more like integral, you know?
Yeah, the thing about well the real thing about resin miniatures is because like resin itself can be is very strong. The thing is that it's brittle, so like you dropping them you're more it's
Oh,
not
it's like more like a shattering.
it's
Okay.
more like a shatter than kind of like a bending break
Gotcha.
on those. They're brittle, rather than, uh, like that. Because I could 3D print, a resin handle for, like, a knife or tools or something, and it's gonna last pretty strong, but if I drop it, you're looking more at the shatter shock rather than that.
Okay.
The that's kind of the trade-off there with resin. Whereas I could take a PLA miniature and kind of bend it pretty good before it really snaps, um, from stress, whereas resins, it's that shock of the shock of being dropped or, something like that is what really breaks them because they're brittle that way.
Interesting. Yeah, I have no experience with resin, so I'm completely in the dark when it comes to that kind of stuff. Um, So let's talk more about, because we kind of brushed on it before, but let's talk more about how painting miniatures kind of transitioned you into getting into D&D. Like, so what about painting them really kind of brought you over? And is there, so I guess kind of what I'm asking is like, what was first, the chicken or the egg kind of situation? Was it D&D a little bit, and then you started painting miniatures, and they got you more into D&D, or was it like you were just painting miniatures, and then that got you into D&D because you were already painting them anyway?
It was more like a little bit of D&D at first. Like I was really most of my friends would know this now, but I was like really shy and reserved at the table. Not really kind of sure what was going on. I was having a hard time kind of connecting with it. And then the paint the miniatures kind of made me get more into D&D and I went, "Oh no, this is fun." Then really kind of started opening up more at the table from that because now we're playing with the miniatures that I painted and made everything so much easier for some strange reason. I can't tell you exactly why. That's just kind of how it worked
It was the
in my
catalyst for your addiction.
yeah, it was addiction, it's an obsession now. I
Yeah.
went from knowing nothing about D&D and in the span of less than 1 year, I have the monster manual practically memorized. So,
Yeah, I've done that once or twice. There's certain game systems that I will just latch onto, and I'll learn everything. Like Wrath and Glory, which is a fairly recent one. If anyone has heard about it, it's a Warhammer 40K um, tabletop role playing game. It's amazing, and you could use your 40K miniatures since you already have them. Um,
yeah.
like they'd fit right in. But anyway, Wrath and Glory, like I just dug really deep in that, and then Pathfinder first edition. I think third edition was the first one that really got me to sink my teeth, and then Pathfinder did it, Starfinder did it, and then Wrath and Glory's done it. But yeah, it really does become an obsession. Like it's a steep slope when it
Yeah.
comes to tabletop role playing games.
It's a very slippery slope.
Yeah.
So,
And like I've heard other stories of people just like doing cosplay of of just D&D esque characters, and then people are like, oh, you play D&D, and they're like, no, what's that? And then they fall right into the right into it too. It's like it's this D&D is just a black hole for
you once you go in, there's no coming out.
because there's something for
No.
everyone in this
Yeah.
hobby. In any table, well, honestly, in any tabletop role playing game, there's something for somebody.
Yeah, TTRPG in general is a very slippery slope, and once you go in, there's no coming out. You live here now. So,
So is D&D like your main slice, or do you play any other systems?
D&D is kind of my main slice. However, I ventured recently into Tales from the Loop.
I have not heard of
Um,
that.
so if anybody's seen Stranger Things or anything like that, it's kind of a kind of similar type setting. So, right now, Tales from the Loop is just it's a D6 system.
I love
Um,
D6 systems.
I love D6 systems. So it's a D6 system, and basically the whole setting is set in at least in the one that we did, it's set in Nevada inside of the loop. It's essentially, it's essentially like the particle collider. It's essentially kind of like a particle collider.
Like the Large Hadron Collider or whatever in
And CERN,
Europe.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But basically, and generally set, you can pick either 80s or 90s on it, and you pick kids or teens. And each kind of one has an archetype. We did teens, so you had, your lone wolf, the jock, the grease monkey, the
Oh, so it's
cheerleader,
like high school clique stereotypes
high school clique stereotypes.
or
Uh,
classes
huh?
or
For
classes.
classes, and
That
each
okay.
class is basically kind of they're knives, not broadswords, when it comes to, what they do. They do one thing really well, and you
Okay.
need others to kind of fill out the missing pieces in the party.
I love that.
Uh, So yeah,
I gotta check this game out. I am hooked already. It's a D6 system. If you do like D6 systems, then you're probably gonna like Wrath and Glory. I can
yeah.
tell you a little bit about that if you're really interested. But like,
So yeah, we had a blast because there's like some kind of like there's not really like magic or anything like that, but it's like, like futuristic 80s. So think like Back to the Future 3, or 2, where they go to the future and it's, futuristic, but the robots are still kind of big and clunky because they're, represented that way in kind of the 80s and 90s films.
yeah, like Doctor
Um
Who Cybermen.
yeah, Doctor Who Cybermen like that. And so there's like some robots and stuff, but there's also like psychic mystic things too, that play a part, and it's really it's something that coming from primarily doing high fantasy settings to then we're like, okay, we're gonna try Tales from the Loop, and then we're like, oh man, this is really fun. Like I got to play. My character was the lone wolf type character, 90s grunge girl. Like it was great.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just like, "Oh, this is fun." And, and Tales from the Loop, they really encourage you to, like, make a playlist for your character, because the settings, it's kind of like settings they're switching from scene to scene in a movie is kind of like the way that things are set up. There's a lot if you like role play, it's really role play heavy. So it set up we had a great time doing that.
That
That was
sounds like
that
a
was a lot of fun.
blast. Have you ever played Call of Cthulhu? It's kind of like that too. It's very role play heavy. The characters that you do play are very limited. Like if you want a gun, you have to play a police officer or something of the
Yeah.
sort, you know? Um,
I've done a one shot for Call of Cthulhu.
did you like that
So
at all?
yeah, I liked it a lot. That was, of course, I like, anything H.P. Lovecraft, Cthulhu-esque type of monsters is just so much fun. So much fun. I'm here for it. So,
Have you played Bloodborne?
Bloodborne.
Yeah,
So, I have a complicated relationship with the Souls games. Uh,
a lot of people do.
yeah. I enjoy watching other people play Bloodborne, let me put it that way. And,
Gotcha.
the board game seems I'm highly interested in the board game, so I'm thinking about checking that out because I know my local game shop just got one and they opened one up for everybody to play with if you wanna try it before you actually buy it, so I think
That's
that's what
pretty
I'm gonna
cool.
end up doing this next weekend.
So, did you want to start talking about foam core?
We can go ahead we keep going there, so let's just go there.
Where do you want to start? Like, what is all right? Because I do a little bit myself. I'm not good
Mhm.
at it, but um, why don't you kind of like, I guess, set the stage for your experience so far with it?
Yeah, so I wanted to start doing it because a little while back, my husband um found this person selling like a sewer set on Etsy. Of like this really it's a beautiful set of foam made sewer set with like uh poured epoxy to make the sewer everything there, and we brought it to a session with a box of miniatures that it painted. um, and I'm sitting there and I'm looking at them and like, man, this looks amazing at the table. This just looks so cool. And I'm sitting there and I'm playing with some of the pieces we weren't using for that particular part of the dungeon. And I'm looking them over because it's really the first time. I really hadn't seen them out of the box at that point. Like the box got just in time for us to take it to the D&D session. So my dungeon master's making a dungeon on the fly. He was having a ball, he was just tickled pink to have miniatures, custom made miniatures, and a custom made set for this sewer adventure that we were doing. And I'm playing with him, and I'm looking at it, and I'm going, "Yeah, this is foam. This is like high density foam that I see at like Walmart. I mean, like at Lowe's
Yeah,
and
Home
Home
Depot.
Depot
Yeah,
and stuff, and
insulation.
yeah, and chipboard and things like that. I'm looking at it, going, I think I can make this. And I'm starting to look at it and play with it. And I'm like looking at pick up one of the pieces that has the poured epoxy on it. And I'm like, nah, I've done epoxy work before. I've done some sculpting work before. thanks to going to art school and stuff, and I'm looking at it going, "I think I can do this. I think I can do this. Let's see," so I haven't go to get the stuff yet, but I've, like, played around with some pieces because I have a friend who has some of that stuff, like, scraps about, just kind of how some of that would work together, and I'm looking at it going, "No, I think I can make this stuff." So I'm, like, slowly getting into it, and I've been utilizing my friend's house because he has the space to play with that kind of stuff. I have a tiny apartment that doesn't lend itself to buying big sheets of hide-and-seek foam
Yeah, especially when
from
you got
from
like
Lowe's.
when I got mine, it was like a 5 foot long
Yeah.
sheet. I was like, where am I gonna put this?
Yeah, yeah. So I'm at his house, playing with it, so that's kind of, like, where I'm at, so I'm sitting there slowly like, "No, I can do this." So I've got kind of an initial plan. I'm gonna try to build an extension to the sewer set that I have, and see about how that's gonna work. So
Yeah, how I got into foam core or whatever was I spent a lot of money on Dwarven Forge. You know what those
mhm.
are? The Dwarven Forge
Yep,
tiles.
yep.
Those are so expensive. They're beautiful. Like if you have the money, if you are a rich gamer and you have the money, definitely go spend the money on Dwarven Forge. They're great. They're
Yeah.
super durable. I've never had any issues with my Dwarven Forge. I use them every chance I get,
Mhm.
but it gets really expensive really quickly. And so I had to stop doing it. I was like, well, I want to have all these 3D set pieces because that's just kind of the dungeon. I'm a very tactile person. I like moving things around. I like using miniatures. So I started like, I guess, delving into like doing it myself. And I actually, instead of doing like the Dwarven Forge tiles where it's just like different puzzle pieces and
Mhm.
everything, what I've since done is I have this big circular. For those of you who are watching or listening, basically have made a big circular thing that is a map that has a little spinning thing, so like the
Mhm.
players can rotate it so they can see every angle. And then I basically just put like different set pieces on it. Let's see if I could do this like this, and then the players can just see if they need
That's
to
cool.
see in any location around the thing to kind of get a bird's eye view, then they can just rotate this. I'm not gonna. It's pretty loud. I'm not gonna do it for the mic's sake, but yeah. And so I just do that instead. And
No, that's a really cool idea.
I'm not very good at like sculpting or anything like that. I just do what gets the job done. But that's what I've started to do. And then so I could just build like wall corners or whatever that can easily separate, so like I can have a building and then just have two foam walls to the outside of the building, and I can separate them, the players can see inside them, then we can kind of close it back up and be like, all right, move things around. And yeah, that's how I do it. It's been working great. And so yeah, and like literally anyone can get into foam core. The hardest part about it, though, the most annoying part about it, is make like if you're gonna make bricks, cutting up all the little tiny bricks to hot glue them together takes hours.
Yeah, I had a friend who like I said, I was at my friend's house kind of messing around with some leftover hide and seek foam that he had to doing the stuff, and he's sitting there looking at it and going, he goes, we could make a jig to like cut tiny pieces and stuff. And I'm like, that's not a bad idea.
It's almost necessary, actually,
Yeah.
especially when you start like I personally like. There's definitely different resources that you like. So Black Magic Crafts is honestly the one that I've used for most of my things. I think that's actually where I got the inspiration for this dilapidated guard tower.
Yeah.
For those of you listening, I have made a very lackluster, haphazard, dilapidated guard
But
tower.
everybody
It
needs a dilapidated guard tower. It's like a quintessential D&D
Yeah,
101.
you gotta.
Dilapidated guard tower.
But anyway, yeah, and it's super simple and easy to do, but Black Magic Crafts actually has like a really good deep dive on like a whole bunch of different like build ideas. I think he does like a little witch's hut. And obviously he's super talented. He does it for a living, but that's, he breaks it down in such a way that anyone can really
Yeah.
get the gist of it and get something that looks at least similar to what he's making a video about. But
Yeah. So that's really cool. I figured also uh rare earth magnets. I put some rare earth magnets into the sets that I have currently to
oh,
click them together.
that's a that's a great idea. I never even thought of that. That'd be perfect for like my little house idea.
Yeah.
Because
Then
then
that
they
way
just
you can click it. And then if you wanted to build like a tall tower, well, they all just click together. So as people go through floors, you can just
take them
add or
off.
remove
Yeah,
things as
that's amazing. You're a genius.
like I said. I play with. I've been playing with it, just kind of before I invest in trying to make. Okay, I'm gonna make a scene because I want to. I play with things first to see if it's gonna work. So I've got a couple. Like I buy bulk miniatures whenever I want to try a new technique or something, sometimes just so I can just play with it, see if something's gonna work or not. And nothing else than I have a box of spare. You need a miniature? Okay, great. Here's a player miniature. Here's a monster. Here's blah 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 blah. So in
I'm
various stages of painting.
I'm the opposite. I'm just like all in, let's go. I'll learn along the way. Like I'm actually pretty sure you can tell on this. I had on my dilapidated guard tower. There's like two different styles of bricks because halfway through I was like, I'm tired of cutting them this small. I'm just gonna cut them bigger.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So it's super fun. It never ceases to amaze me how many different art forms you can cram into a TTRPG.
it's insane. You could do sculpting, you could do painting, uh, just like traditional art with people like drawing up their characters. Those that always
Map making.
map making. Yeah, that
Yeah.
too. Anything.
Yeah. It's just, that's something that's like you said, there's something for everybody in TTRPGs. We even have my friend, we nicknamed him our normie or a normal person of our D&D group because he's just like the quintessential jock. And for some strange reason, I don't know how we convinced him to play D&D with us. That is a mystery to me that I will never figure out. Like this man does not do any type of other nerdy stuff. It's just D&D. But he is just all about the combat, like combat, combat, combat. That's like his favorite thing. Um, with us, I was like, man, yeah, like I said, even the most hardcore of jocks has found something that he likes in D&D. So,
Well, yeah, I mean, I've been running games for a long time, and you'd be surprised at the type of people that I've convinced to play that end up really enjoying the game and they've stuck with it for years.
mhm.
There really is something for anybody in this hobby.
Oh yeah, it's great. But I finally convinced them the other day, or they not really convinced. I was voluntold to DM a session for them. So
I guess that kind of goes right into our transition. Do you want to start
yeah,
talking about your DM experience? Like, because
yeah,
last time we talked, you had just started DMing, like
yes.
very fresh. So I imagine it's
So
been a couple weeks since then. Have you gotten a chance to get more experience?
yes, I have. So I convinced Dono the cleric. He runs A&I on Twitch. Um, I am DMing Curse of Strahd, a playthrough of Curse of Strahd for them. And we've done several sessions now, in which the session before last, I TPK'd the party. So, for anyone who is new to D&D and might not understand that term, I that was a total party kill. Um,
Board wipe.
board wipe. Nobody was left alive kind of situation.
So how did you hand? I guess how did you handle that? Did you do anything interesting with like all the characters, or like how'd you end
Yeah.
up resolving that?
Yeah. So they all died. I gave them plenty of chances. I fortunately have the luxury of, being on the other side of that situation as a player, and then being on that side as now on the DM side of this situation. They ended up, so I'm saving their character sheets because those characters are now vampire spawn
Oh, oh,
because they died to vampires. So and I had them go ahead and roll up new characters because we're only um they had actually just leveled up to level 5. So we weren't for too far into the campaign, but Curse of Strahd is really punishing. It's a very punishing campaign. Um, but they're all
yeah,
experienced players, so I really wasn't too worried about, you know, about them. So but was really interesting. I kind of let them decide, what do you want to roll up new characters? Do you want to keep going? And apparently they like what I'm doing because they're like, no, we're gonna roll up new characters. So I let them pick kind of on how they wanted to, if they wanted to be connected to their previous characters or not. So I have one character is the older brother of the character that died, who's investigating on what happened to his little brother. Um,
that's sad.
that's sad. Yeah,
That,
man, he's
that's
gonna be so
interesting.
upset next session.
Uh, yeah. Do you
So
you said they're all like pretty experienced players, so they just
they're all experienced DMs. I'm
oh, that's
DMing
even
for a
different.
table of DMs, which isn't terrifying at all.
I can
Uh
imagine that being pretty intimidating.
yeah, 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 that's very intimidating. On the other hand, though, they're just like really supportive too.
I
So
hope so. They've all
yeah,
been in your shoes.
yeah, they've all been in issues, and they're just happy to be playing because a bunch of them are the forever DMs.
Absolutely. I was just
So
saying, like, like, if I was in the game and my character died, I'd be like, all right, cool. Hey, to try something new this time.
new, yeah,
Break out
yeah,
the box of previous characters I
their
got built.
sheets, yeah.
So yeah,
So
like,
that's it's been fun. Making up things on the fly, running Curse of Strahd, how I want to run Curse of Strahd, because I kind of obsess over Ravenloft and Barovia because that was my first D&D game or like D&D campaign and one shot that I kind of went through. So it's always going to be my favorite thing, which
yeah,
I'm
your
really
first
stoked
experience
about the
is
new
usually
source
your
book.
best.
Yeah. Uh, but that's been going really good. It's still terrifying. I still sit down each week and go, okay, I'm okay. It's gonna be fine. They don't know what's gonna happen.
I'm gonna be real with you. I've been doing this for 15 years. That feeling never goes away. It never does.
That's
Ever.
great.
You'll be feeling that every session, like, at least me personally. I can't speak for everyone. I'm sure there's someone out there, but I guarantee you Matt Mercer, every time he goes on Critical Role, he's nervous.
Yeah.
I feel it in my gut.
Yeah.
But
So it's just the stage fright is always fun, but just doing it's fun to be the one behind the screen. I'm the man behind the curtain. Pay no attention to me. Pay attention to the story that I'm telling. Is nice and fun, and to guide people through the world that I'm building and modifying is a lot of fun. And trying things out. One player, the character that died, but one player was gracious enough to try a homebrew warlock subclass that I built, which actually worked really well. But I mean, the patron was a little odd for gothic horror setting because the warlock's patron just wants to be comfy.
I
But
always
the
love
class worked.
I always love using my players as guinea pigs for things I want to try out for my Because I'm actually currently designing my own game, and so I'll use like a base system. So like currently I use like Pathfinder or whatever,
Mhm.
which is 3.5. But I'll use like 3.5 as like a base system, and then I'll change so much stuff in it. It gives my players whiplash. They're like, I don't know the rules. I'm like, neither do I. We're here to figure it out. Because like it's actually the last couple games I've ran, it's actually been pretty bad because I was like, all right, I don't like how that rule went. We're gonna change it up this time. This is how it's gonna work now. And they're like, "Ah, okay." But
Yeah, no, my friends, they're here for it for the changes that like I want to make to this campaign setting. So they're like, "Cool, let's do that. That sounds great. I might die, but it's gonna be fun." I was like, "Okay, thank you for indulging me." So
it sounds
uh,
like they're just happy to be, you know,
they're just happy to be here, and you
yeah,
know what? I was like, "Okay, great. They're happy to be through my growing pains as a new DM."
well,
Which I think for new DMs that's kind of really important on having a table that's like, no, cool, we understand that. We're here for it.
yeah,
Do what you want to do, bro.
having understanding people like having a fellow dungeon master especially at the table is always like the ideal way to learn how to dungeon master because it is kind of like
Mhm.
this give and take between the players that you you'll have to kind of learn your own voice and your own style and how you want to run things and everything like that, and figuring that out initially can be intimidating and scary and all that kind of stuff, and nervousness never goes away, and stage fright never goes away, and you know it's it's just always going to be this way. And so at least that's something to look forward to. It'll be consistent.
Yeah, at least one thing's going to be consistent. That's
Yeah.
great. Uh, but no, it's been a lot of fun. Actually getting to do it now. I was terrified to do it. I My first experience was I was voluntold by my DM. He's like, "Okay, I'm gonna. It's your turn. You're gonna do it this week." And I went, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, you're gonna do it. It's Halloween. Pick what you want to wear on. I'll be there." I went, okay, sure, fine, great. This is fine. I don't know what I'm doing."
I mean, sometimes that's the best way to do it, right? You just got to rip the band-aid off.
Yeah, rip the band-aid off, and like I said, I'm obsessed with Curse of Strahd. So I ran Strahd Must Die tonight, which is a very fun one shot, especially if you want to do it like on Halloween or something, because you've got 4 real hours to find what you need to kill Strahd. At the end of that time period, Strahd, you're fighting Strahd, ready or not. Here he comes. So, and you're running around Castle Ravenloft trying to find all of the different things that you need, and there's traps and people to help you along the way. And Strahd comes up every hour, going, "Well, I can help you if you know you do this thing for me."
Everyone knows that the most effective way to defeat Strahd is to get a monk in the party. Actually, make a whole party of monks, right? Whole party
Right.
of monks. You get Strahd on the roof. Everyone's on the roof. And you get them over like a skylight, and then you have all of the monks try to grapple Strahd to fall into the skylight because vampires can't enter homes without permission. It would kill them. It's the most effective and easiest way to do it.
Yes. No, they ended up killing him by the skin of their teeth, but they ended up killing him, ironically, without any of the things that they needed to kill him. Which is why by the skin of their teeth, they just barely managed to kill him. In which they had a blast. I was terrified at the end of it. I'm just like, "Okay, did you guys have fun?" And they're over there going, "Yeah, it was so much fun, blah, blah, blah. Take that, Strahd, blah, 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 blah." And I'm over here going, "Okay, great. I'm
Yeah,
glad
you're
you
just
liked it. I'm gonna go crawl in a hole now."
ride the adrenaline high on the
Yeah.
way home.
And at the end, the DM's like, "See, it wasn't that bad." I'm like, "Please don't ever do that to me again. Like, give me a little bit more time, bro." He's like, "You weren't gonna say yes otherwise." It's like, yeah. I mean, you're not wrong, but
Maybe that's what I gotta do because I've run games for like a lot of people that have been like, oh yeah, I'd like to DM one day. I'm like, all right, cool. I'll like DM for a while. You want to try DMing? And they're like, no, I don't want to do it yet. And maybe I gotta do that. It's like it's your turn now.
Your turn now. Yeah, yeah, that's what he did, and I was like, I wasn't gonna say no. Like, and everybody's like, yeah, it's gonna be so much fun. Blah blah blah. And I'm like, okay, cool.
And eventually, it becomes like this itch you can't scratch. It's just like, all right, cool. I got these other stories I want to tell. I got this. So I run like kind of like episodic adventure kind of things. I
Hmm.
don't do the whole grand scale like the big bad evil guy. It's more of just like there's evil people out there. You can solve it if you want. You could start an inn if you want. I don't really care as a dungeon master. I'll sit behind that screen all you want me to. I'll just be an arbiter of the rules, just staying back, just be like, all right, yeah, you can't do that. You could do that though.
Yeah.
But
Actually, oh, I'm sorry.
no, you go ahead.
No, I speaking of which, kind of like um episodic. I convinced my friend at work to start playing D&D with some of his other friends. Well, they invited me to a one shot, which I'm going to be playing this weekend. But that DM, after hearing me kind of explain my current DMing experience and everything, and how I'm generally, because I'll teach a new player anything that they want. I will sit right next to you. I will hold your hand. I'll help you walk through this, building a character and everything else. And he goes, well, I have a project I want to try. So next thing I know, I'm in a meeting with a bunch of other DMs, and apparently we've all decided that we're going to do kind of like an anthology type, consistent anthology thing, except each one of us is like going to be doing a different one shot, but all of the other characters are going to stay consistent throughout it. Um,
That would be really cool because then you get different dungeon master styles every time.
every time with same characters. So
That's
it's just so
interesting.
whenever it's your turn to DM, your character goes and does something else off, and there we kind of set it up initially where you're all kind of meeting at a bar at the center of the multiverse. And you get your quests that you're going on for that particular week or storyline that you're following, and that's the DM that's DMing. So,
So is it kind of like a round robin where the players are also sometimes the dungeon master?
yep, we're all DMs. So we're all gonna be doing that. But this week, that's this way you get uh, multiple different styles of DMing. Um, so it's gonna be interesting.
How are you going to
'Cause
handle the characters that aren't being
so it's kind of like a guild or like a bar at the center of the universe. So
Okay,
they'll
gotcha.
be
So
on a
it's
different guild mission. So I mean that character still gets the experience or
gotcha.
has still has the milestone of making it through the adventure. Um, at the same time as everyone else is doing their stuff.
Awesome. Like that's one thing in all of my experience. I've never had the opportunity to do like a round robin game. I would love to, but just never got the chance. I'm usually just I have a tendency to like seek people out and like get new players. I really like enjoying teaching new players how to play the game. So that's where I
Hmm.
spend a lot of my personal energy. It's only recently that I've started playing a lot of games with more experienced players, or sometimes more experienced than even myself. So,
Yeah.
what what are some what's like the biggest growing pain you've had with getting into DMing so far?
Um, the biggest growing pain that I've had is I've had a rules lawyer at my table once. That he's good natured about it, knowing that I'm a new DM, but he's super. I've had to tell him, hey, I like the rules and everything, but I'm also very much a rule of cool DM. Like, provide me it's a good reason that how this could possibly work, and we'll see if it does. I'll make that judgment call. Um, and that some of the things that I'm gonna run might not work the same way as you think. And so just kind of like reining in his rule lawyery tendencies has been interesting. Like, I understand that you like the rules, but sometimes we're gonna
Yeah,
ask forgiveness rather than permission here.
yeah. Uh, rules lawyers can be pretty tricky to navigate sometimes, especially if they're close friends.
Mhm.
Um, what have you done to like resolve it? I suppose because everyone has
Um,
different methods to resolving rules lawyers. I was just
yeah.
wondering how you've kind of
Um,
if you've kind of found your I don't know found your voice, I guess.
yeah, so, finding my voice, especially now that, I'm at least on the DM side of things, I've never had a problem telling anybody what I'm thinking, just kind of from my experience, general life experience. So I've never had a problem doing that. It's just doing that gently, figuring out how to do it gently. Um, so we can keep the fun at the table because that's the most important thing is, having fun. I never want to do a DM versus a player kind of situation, I'm telling a story that I want you guys to take part in. I'm not trying to like actively kill you guys. Um, on stuff like that. So it's just kind of pulling that person to the side and essentially kind of, in Pirates of the Caribbean, whenever Elizabeth Swan says, according to the Pirates Code, and Barbossa turns around and says, well, they're more of like guidelines
Guidelines,
and
yeah.
actual rules. That's where I'm like actually pulls out DMG because I forget where it states it in the DMG that these are more guidelines than actual rules. That says something very similar in that, and I'm like, well, if we're gonna pull out rules and the rules lawyer, like the actual DMG states here, bud.
That's
So and
actually
we're
only a fairly recent addition too, specifically
yeah,
for that reason.
yeah. And so I was like, so and kind of explaining to him, we're kind of play it fast and loose with some of these rules. Just because I'm figuring out exactly how I want to do that. And some of these rules I'm just kind of like, meh, that just doesn't exactly sound like fun, so I'm gonna ignore it.
Yeah, I am a rules lawyer's worst nightmare. Absolutely, I am because I'll be like, "Ah, I don't like that rule at all. I don't want to use it. Like, and it'll just be like hit points in my game. I
Mhm.
don't increase hit points. That rules lawyers get really upset with that sometimes. I'm like, it's not the kind of game I want to run. Sorry. What I do is like in session zero to kind of get a wrangle on rules lawyers is like if I happen to have one because I've had a couple from time to time. Usually what I do is I basically kind of go on a spiel in session zero and I'm like, hey, all right, this is the kind of game I want to run. I don't really care about the rules. When we are actually at the table, no one stops anyone at the table. Like, we're not going to stop and bring out the book at the table. I hate
Mhm.
that. It takes up time. We're just, we're stalling just to go look up a rule. I don't like that. So, whenever we're at the table, I'll do a quick ruling and then we'll go with that. And then afterward, if you still have issue with it, then we can either go back and look what the actual rule is, or we can retcon it, we can do whatever, but we don't do it when we're actually at the game table to play. So I give the excuse of like we only have 4 hours because I usually run 4 to 6 hours, but
Mhm.
we only have 4 hours a week to play this, or sometimes even less, 4 hours a month sometimes, to play this. I am not interested in delving into the rules to figure out the one specific way this is supposed to be resolved. I'm just gonna, figure out what's the best at this particular moment, and then we can readdress it later. That's what I do. That's kind of just what I tell them. Point blank, this is how I do it.
Yeah.
That may be a way that could help you. You know.
Yeah, that's a good point. Just because especially for some people, it's so hard to get them to role play. So to have them stop and
Mm-hmm.
wait, and while somebody looks up a rule on how something works, so by the time you get back to the actual role playing, they've kind of like
They've been deflated.
closed off.
Yeah.
Yeah, again. So that's my favorite thing is to get somebody to come out of their shell for RP because so many people are afraid of it.
Yeah,
Um,
like one thing that I do is I won't even like if my players are like really getting into role play. I have a large issue with how social skills, specifically in Dungeons and Dragons, are rolled. but social skills are kind of rolled backwards. You role
Mhm.
play first, and then you roll the skill, and then that determines the result. And I feel that that's the opposite of the way it should be done. You should roll first, and then role play the result. But not a lot of people do that because they get like wrapped up in their character and role playing and stuff like that. So I've actually gone away from both of those now, and if you're just role playing well, I won't have anyone roll. I just kind of go based off of like the way the NPC, I have in my head how the NPC would react. I have a general idea of what the character's stats are, and I kind of make a guesstimated estimate of what the average result would be of the die roll. And so I won't even have players roll for a vast majority of the things because like
Mhm.
if you're a rogue and you're lockpicking and you do that constantly and consistently, at some point, like if I know you'll be able to unlock this simple locked door, I'm not going to have you lock it. You're going to take the time to do it. You're going to be in character doing it, and you're just going to do it. No roll needed, so there's no failure. You just, and that's really good for new players. And that's kind
Yeah.
of where I picked it up and learned it from, was running games for new players. Because when you tell them, like, they get really excited about using their skills from their character, and then, they looked it and they found it, like, yeah, I want to use this lockpick skill. They roll it and then they fail.
Yeah.
Well,
It's no
that,
fun.
yeah. So I've gone the other way, and that's just kind of what I do. I do kind of like a fly by the seat of your pants game.
Yeah, I've had at least I haven't done this yet, but it's kind of something that I'm like kind of letting people kind of do is kind of something similar. I only um make people like if it's like a super important situation, like like another charisma caster versus another charisma caster. So for example, Strahd, because that's my game I'm currently running. Strahd's own suave and charisma against somebody else's, like the warlock. The warlock got Strahd. Like normally he's a noble, right? He's a noble. They're gonna nobles just have certain, for the
Pompous
most
and
part,
arrogant.
pompous, suave, arrogant, can be charming whenever they want to get something else. So for the most part, I didn't really have the warlock role for any of that. Especially when it comes to being like a charisma based caster. You know, he's just already suave enough. But however, trying to get Strahd to agree to leave them alone while they were in the village of Locky. Well, you're going to need to roll for that. You're going to have to. Is your charisma better than Strahd's? Kind of situation. On that, and he succeeded. Unfortunately, they just stated that only Strahd will leave them alone. They said nothing about his minions.
Loophole.
Loopholes, people, loopholes.
That's the kind of stuff you pull when players finally gain access to Wish. You're like, oh,
Yeah.
cool. Give me in writing what you want your wish to be. And then you just like, go through it and monkey paw it. I only do that uh, whenever they're gifted a wish for like a
Hmm.
genie or something. Like you got to turn it malicious. If the players has access to wish, then I let them do whatever they
Yeah.
want with it. But
Yeah. So that's kind of like on situations like that. That's kind of where I'm leaning towards is just how important is this super important? Is your convincing a king to aid you or do part of your army to that? But like trying, sweet talking the guard into letting you in. Nah, you're a bard. You have silver tongue already. Like,
yeah, it's kind of like assumed with the class.
yeah, yeah,
When
yeah.
people play these characters, they kind of assume. What I do is I just kind of like I go through my head like, do I want this result to be random?
Hmm.
If no, then I won't have the players roll. I'll either decide what I want to happen and then that's just what happens, or I'll just let the players do what they intended to do, and then we can leave the dice alone until we get to something that I'm like, I don't want that, or I want it to be random. So if I want a chance of failure, then I'll have my players roll. If I
Yeah.
don't want a chance of failure, I won't have them roll, or like I'll have a result that just happens, and that kind of gets on, you know, uh, some people's nerves or whatever. It's like, well, I didn't even get a chance. It's like, yeah, it was impossible, and when you roll it, you think there's a chance to succeed. Especially, so like the thing that gets me is like skills are not natural 20. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, so if you uh, get a natural 20 on a skill check, that doesn't mean anything at all. And so a lot of
Yeah.
people get butthurt. They're like, well, I got a natural 20. It's still impossible. You
Yeah, it's like
can't,
you got a natural 20, which gives your +5 skill, so that you got a 25. This man rolled a 29. So,
yeah. It's also a very slippery slope when you do get into like Bard and Charisma casters where
mhm.
I roll to seduce. Still have free will, but
Yep.
yeah,
You can see how well that helps you, but no.
yeah. But
Sorry if
laws of physics still exist.
laws of physics still exist, bud. So,
Yeah. We
but
are approaching on the hour. Did you want to go
mhm.
longer or do you have to get off soon?
I do have to get off soon.
Then would you like to do closing remarks? Is there any last things you'd like to talk about or bring up, mention?
Um, no, not really that I can think of, you know. I just think that going across, I hope people have learned something from my experience and everything. You know, it's a, you know, new DMing is it's a scary thing, but it's fun. You know, at a certain point, just bite the bullet, do it, rip the band-aid off. You know, I find one shots might be easiest to kind of like dip your toe into that rather than go, oh, you don't have to do a whole campaign right away. Just, you know, like, hey, can I try this one thing? And we'll see how it goes. You
Speaking of
know?
which, I guess that's something we can close on. Like, if do you have? We'll both kind of tell what our favorite like one shots would be like to recommend to other new dungeon masters. So why don't you go ahead and go first? What is a one shot that you would recommend to new dungeon masters to get into DMing for the first time?
Um, so again, love Cursive Strahd. So in Cursive Strahd, you have the Death House. It's a really great one shot. What's nice about it is it's designed for to be a kind of introductory adventure. But it's a very punishing introductory adventure. Most people don't generally run it as an introductory adventure, but the nice thing is it's a haunted house. You got 3 floors, you know, and it tells you exactly kind of what's on each floor and where. You can change the monsters up in relation to party level, kind of on what's there, what's not. At the end, there's, you know, innately it has a shambling mound at the end that you fight. And then the house itself like has traps everywhere and things. So it's really fun. It's a really fun just like get in there, you know, monster of the week kind of type vibe on that's my really favorite one. And of course, Strahd Must Die Tonight. Of course, that's one other one that you can like alter to be kind of more of a monster of the week setting. You know, kind of pick your arena and then kind of find your clues to figure out either what the monster is and how to defeat it. And then at the end of the time period, ready or not, you're fighting the big monster. Just kind of those similar type settings. And so you can find those two things pretty easily. There's some other ones that are a lot of fun. You know, some people just like all out brawls. Yeah, those are fun. So,
Um, Kind of speaking about kind of all out brawls. I actually my one shot my example is a Pathfinder first edition one shot. It's actually a series of one shots. It's called Weeby Goblins. I don't know if you've heard about it specifically,
I think I
but
have.
the entire party consists of goblins, like little watermelon sized chittering goblins that are attacking a town. And the next, and then there's a series of them. So it's like Weeby Goblins 2, Weeby Goblins Free, Weeby 4 Goblins, and Weeby Heroes. When the goblins finally become the heroes of the story at the very end. So
That's
it's a
great.
great introductory one shot to Dungeons and Dragons, especially if you have a whole bunch of new players that don't know what they're doing because they're goblins. They don't know what they're doing either.
Me neither.
Yeah,
It's like goblins and kobolds are always so fun just because
they really are.
what is it? We have a saying amongst my friends. It's feral goblin energy. You know, just the it's chaos. We don't know what's happening, but it's fun.
Yeah. So yeah,
So,
if you're like itching to DM and you're kind of nervous about not knowing how to DM, I'd recommend Weeby Goblins because it's super easy. It's one small town. The players attack the town and are trying to eat. The goblins, they like horse meat, so trying to kill horses and all that kind of stuff. And the objectives for the one shots are actually pretty funny, and the whole one shot series is kind of like a metagaming play on what it is to be a player versus like the monster kind of thing. It's kind
mhm,
of like a turn on its head aspect. So,
yeah.
um, and it's really interesting because the campaign setting that's from is Rise of the Rune Lords. So the one shot that the Weeby Goblins one shot is actually the goblins that attack the town from the Sandpoint campaign arc, like the adventure path.
Mhm.
So you can, if you want to do the whole Weeby Goblins adventure line and then go directly into the Rise of the Rune Lords adventure path, it's like seamless. It's really cool.
That's
So,
really cool.
so yeah,
Yeah, so I guess there's our recommendations for new DMs.
definitely. So yeah, this is Dougie's Dungeon Podcast. I will see you guys later, I guess. You want to get out of here?
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it was a lovely be on. Shut yourself out one last time.
Okay,
Go.
yes. So, I am Stealthy. I'm Stealthy Stormy. It's been great hanging out here. You can, if you want to catch any of the stuff that I'm doing, I'll give like an actual list of where you can find me. So you can find me on TikTok as Stealthy Stormy and on Instagram as Stormy's Rogue Miniatures. You can find me pretty much most weeks. My main home Twitch channel is Department of Adventurers, where you can catch me Wednesday nights and Saturday nights. Wednesday nights, I'm just doing a playthrough of Smite. It's literally called the Bottle of Chaos stream. Um, with my friends, and again, there's lots of feral goblin energy there as we wreck things. Saturday nights is D&D with our Department of Adventures campaign, where we're in the midst of actually trying to stop the apocalypse. So, and there's lots of fun things there. And then you can find me on Commune DM's channel on Sunday nights, where we're playing through his homebrew world. So that's a lot of fun there with again lots of other D&D content creators. So if you guys want two things to check out, like that's kind of where you can find me pretty consistently.
Yeah, definitely go check out her Instagram because go check out all the minis that were on the show.
Yes, you can catch
Beautiful.
all my stuff there.
All right. Well,
All
that's all
right,
I got.
thanks.
Thesis.